Well, hello everyone, and welcome to MISA's webinar. We're so glad that you're here today with us, and we are featuring our lovely photographers and iPhone photographers, Charles Needle, Melissa Needle, and Rad Drew. My name is Allie Sheehan, and I am an Associate Director of Programming with Madeline Island School of the Arts, and have the pleasure of being here with you all today. This is being recorded, so it will be sent out to anyone that has pre-registered, as well as it will be uploaded to our YouTube or to MISA's YouTube channel. We're excited to give you all a sneak peek into their two workshops coming up this July and October, as well as just hearing about some of the apps that they work with in. So before I hand it over to them, I'd just like to take a few minutes to share a little bit about each location that their workshops will be held at. Give me one second. All right, here we go. So their first workshop is on Madeline Island. Madeline Island is our flagship location, nestled in the pristine beauty of Lake Superior. It's truly a place of inspiration where the natural world and creative spirit come together. It is the largest of the Apostle Islands and offers breathtaking shorelines, lush forests, and an atmosphere of peace and reflection for artists to fall in love with the moment they arrive. The island also has a charming small town feel with local shops, galleries, and cozy cafes. Whether you're exploring the shoreline, photographing the landscape, or simply enjoying the slower pace of the island life, there's something truly special about this place. And they have a workshop in Pacific Grove, California. This is MISA's newest location, hosted at the Asilomar Conference Center and Grounds. The Asilomar campus offers panoramic views of the ocean, easy access to the beach, and is located along the stunning Monterey Peninsula. It is known for its dramatic coastal scenery, rugged cliffs, crashing waves, and pristine beaches along the Monterey shoreline. The town itself is full of charm, quaint shops, local restaurants, and plenty of inspiring places to explore with your camera. We hope that you will join Charles, Melissa, and Rad at either their Madeline Island campus this summer, July 13th through the 17th, or in Pacific Grove this fall, October 12th through the 16th. And with that, I will pass it over to Melissa.
Awesome. Thanks so much. All right. I'm going to share my screen. All right. And then I got to get rid of these meeting controls. Perfect. All right. So I just wanted to reiterate. So as we were just shared with, we have our July and October workshops that are coming up. Basically, they'll run very similar with an opening reception the first night. Then we'll have 4 full days of photographic excursions. We're going to have lectures, live demos with the apps. We'll have time to download and practice, and we'll have time just to sit around and chat, which is always fun. And then the last morning, we typically have everyone submit an image or two. And I think this is the most fun because we can all stand in the same spot and everyone has 30 different images. So it's really exciting to see what everybody creates at the end of the week. And the really cool thing is that there's a small student to instructor ratio of 10-1. So we do break up into groups, but you get to work with all the instructors separately on a different day. So it's a lot of fun. You get a lot of individualized attention. As I said, we'll have daily field and lecture demonstrations, time to download the apps and practice. And what we're really going to focus on is pretty much anything and everything contained to an iPhone, with basic and hidden features of the native camera, specialty shooting apps and techniques, creative editing, painterly apps, infrared, double exposure, and I can't even talk about it, so much more. And we don't get into a lot of specifics about the details right now because apps are constantly changing. And so Rad and Charles and I pride ourselves on being on the up and up and what's new. So something that's new right now might be old news when we get there, or might even be gone. So we make sure that we're up on all the latest and greatest with a cutting edge. So we give you the best of what we can with our iPhone. All right. So, what is the best camera that you have is the one that you always have with you. And what do you always have with you is that little camera that also makes phone calls. And these iPhones are getting more and more powerful, and the stuff that you can do with them is completely amazing. And so, what I wanted to share with you today are two kind of things. The first are using Painterly apps. Um, my first tip for using Painterly apps is to edit your photo to the kind of final look prior to putting it into the Painterly app. These Painterly apps add like a filter to your image and alter the image in a different way. And so, what I mean by editing your photo is typically I put it in Snapseed, which when we go to Madeline Island or Sillamar, we'll go through that Snapseed in detail, showing you how to edit your image. And Rad will also go over probably Lightroom Mobile. So, there's multiple ways to edit your image to that final look. Then you want to put it into that Painterly app, get the fun look that you're looking for. And then typically I'll make some smaller adjustments maybe after I get it out of the Painterly app to get my final image that I'm ready to share with everybody. And so when we go to Asilomar and Madeline Island, we will look in depth at the Painterly apps. I'll show you how they work. But today I just wanted to show you 4 apps that I really love right now. The first is Artista Impresso, and that will create an oil type painting look to your image, which is kind of fun. The next one is Prisma. Prisma is an app. I think if you're looking for a Painterly app but you don't know where to start, it's a little pricey, but it's got over 700 art filters in it. So if you can't find an art filter that you like, give up with art filters, because with over 700, I don't even think you can look at them all. There's so many of them. But anything from pen strokes to some really crazy stained glass looks. But Prisma is a lot of fun to create images with your photos. Tangled FX is a fun one that kind of creates, I call it like a stained glass look. So you can see here I have some tulips, and honestly, it looks like a little stained glass window to me when it goes into Tangled FX. And the last one I wanted to highlight today was Waterlog, and that's a watercolor app. So that's going to change your image into a watercolor look. And so the first pro tip I have for you is when you think about an image that you want to put into one of these Painterly apps, you want to put an image in that has an exaggerated color. And I do this by exaggerating the ambiance or saturation of an image prior to putting it into the Painterly app. And by that, I would use the Snapseed app. And I would use either Tune Image or Adjust. So Tune Image, if you have the older version of Snapseed, it's called Adjust. If you have the newer version of Snapseed, you're going to look in that tool and find saturation and ambiance. You're going to bump those up so they kind of look ridiculous, but that's going to give that Painterly app something to work with and create amazing art. And so what I mean by that is, here's an example of an image that I took. I wouldn't say that's a spectacular image. And what I like to do is I'm seeing art in my life. So when I saw this fish, I saw the cool oranges, the 2 different shades here. And what I also saw was kind of the reflections on the water here from the ceiling in this gazebo we were in. So that's the art I saw, but definitely this image does not convey that art to me. And so I'm going to use my iPhone to create the art that I saw. And so the first example is just taking this image and putting it straight into the Prisma app. I did nothing to it. I simply put it into the Prisma app, and I used the jellyfish filter in the Prisma app, and this is what came out. I think that's kind of hideous. I don't like it. I don't like the greens. The pinks are a little much. So it didn't really do much for me. But if I take the image, man, this is my original image over here on the right. I put it into that Snapseed app, which is that basic editing app that we'll talk about it ad nauseum when we get together, so that you know how to use this in and out. But you put it into Snapseed. I then use the tool called Crop, so you can see crop the image a little tighter. And then I used either, again, Tune Image or Adjust, depending on the version of Snapseed you have on your phone, to bump up that ambiance and that saturation. So you can see we're really starting to get these oranges now that were sort of in the original image, but now they're kind of really pronounced. Now I take this image and I put it into the Prisma app just like this, and now look what comes out. This amazing orange now of the fish is really exaggerated. And now instead of that ucky pink, I've got this beautiful purple and greens. And so really just by changing the saturation and the ambiance, I've now got a completely different image that came out of that Painterly app. Now to finish this image off, I loved what's happening up here, but I wasn't loving down here with this kind of green, and I wanted it to match up there. So I know I have another app in my back pocket. Oh, sorry. Before I do that, I just wanted to reiterate, This is with no adjustments. You can see what came out with the jellyfish filter in the app Prisma. And then bumping up that saturation and ambiance, you can see what came out. So again, dramatically different images that came out. And then, as I said, I didn't love what was happening in the corner. So I know, and when we get together in Madeline Island or in Asilomar, I've talked a lot about Touch Retouch. It's an amazing app, but one of the things it has is a cloning tool. And I use that cloning tool to bring down some of this detail here into the corners to give it that kind of finished look. And this was my finished image that I absolutely love. So those are the tips I have for Painterly apps. My last tips to talk about today are collecting and using backgrounds. And when we get together, we'll take pictures of all kinds of random things so that you can start thinking about doing double exposure. So that's where we're going to take two images and combine them together to create a final product. So what do I mean by backgrounds? I have albums full of just backgrounds. This is a wallpaper, looking down at a pool with the light coming into it from the sun, petals that have collected, scrapbook paper at Michael's, glass that I found that was on a door one time. Here's I think that was just some stonework in Italy. Looking up through the skylight in the car, the rain. When you go to a museum, look at all the different artifacts in a museum. This was a handwritten letter from, I don't know, the 1800s from someone. So I took a picture through the glass. I think this is a pillow at a hotel I was at one day and some more wallpapers. So again, just anything you see, start collecting those and keeping them in a folder. And so the first thing you want to think about when you start doing these double exposures is think about your subject matter and what you want to put together. So things like windmills and tulips. So those two go together. So here I have a picture of some tulips, picture of some windmills, and I use that Snapseed double exposure tool to combine the two images together. When I think of Seattle, I think of rain because usually when I go there, it's raining. And so I use that image looking up through the skylight of the rain on the skylight in the car with my image here of the Space Needle in Seattle. And again, I'm using that double exposure tool in Snapseed to put those two together, which we'll go over when we get together and show you how to use that. Just to give your picture a different look. So this is an image actually that came out of my Olympus camera. So my big camera, I put it on my phone. That's how I got this beautiful image here. And then I had a picture that had some like blurry purple to it. And so I used that double exposure tool in Snapseed, put the two together, and now I have kind of this nice soft look to this image. And then this is actually 3 images. So you can keep stacking images on top of each other with that double exposure till your heart's content. This is a maple leaf image, or sorry, a maple seed. And then I have this, it's kind of a rough texture. That was kind of some concrete. And then there's that letter that I took from that museum. And this actually I've used on greeting cards before. So again, your imagination, you can go wild, and it's really if you can imagine it, you can do it with your phone. Here's just an example of how I see and how I start to think. So this is the scene that I saw, and what really caught my eye was this fun little vase here, and I liked how there wasn't too much behind it. So this was the shot that I took that came out of my camera. It's not that great. You can see up in the corner I got that lamp, and I think the horizon's a little crooked there, which is not good. So I used that Snapseed app, and the tools I used in Snapseed were crop. So I cropped the image, and in that crop, I was able to straighten the horizon. So now you see I've got a nice straight horizon. I used the healing tool in Snapseed to remove that little lampshade that was kind of there on the right-hand side. And then I used either tune image or adjust. Again, that depends on which Snapseed app you have on your phone, which version, to kind of adjust the color, the contrast. And then I used a tiny bit of the tool called Glow to give it a little bit of a glow. And again, there's nothing wrong with this image. I like it a lot. However, I thought, well, if I could put a background on it. So I had this wallpaper that I found in an Italian restaurant one time. And voila, I used that double exposure tool to put the two together. And I was then able to create this lovely image that I've actually used on several greeting cards that I've sent to people. So again, your imagination's your limit. And if you can think it, you can do it with your phone. So my pro tip for today when doing the double exposures is that the color of the background matters. And what do I mean by that? So you can see here, I have this really fun picture of some tulips. And I thought, wouldn't it be wacky if like you were looking at it and you thought you were underwater, but you weren't? I thought maybe that might look fun. So I thought, all right, I had this water background that I had, but I have a blue one and I have a black and white one. What do you think the difference will look like? So I overlaid both the blue water and the black and white water with my tulips. And here's what happened. You can see here, because I had a lot of white in the tulip area, the blue is coming through, and I think it kind of enhanced the little yellow, made a little orange there with the greens. I kind of loved what the blue did. However, when I just used that black and white background image with it, it kind of just dulled everything down, and I don't think that looks super great. So for this one, the color background really brought out and changed that image, and that was my final image. And again, that was using that double exposure tool in Snapseed. Now, the flip side is here you see we have the black and white of those flower petals versus the color of the flower petals. And I combined this with a color image of some tulips. And look what happened. Here's the black and white version. You can see the color of the tulips are still coming through. However, when I combined it with the color version, that brown kind of muted the color of the tulips. And I don't really like that. That to me looks kind of muddy. Versus I love what happened here. I just get that texture, and now the color of the tulips are coming through. And so that was my final image there, again, using that double exposure tool in Snapseed. So color matters when you're using your backgrounds, and have both black and white and color. And so here, if you want to take a quick shot, here's how to get in touch with me. But I hope we've excited you enough. I'm going to turn it over to Charles, but hopefully you'll think about joining us at one of our campuses this summer. So I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to Charles. We can't hear you. You're on mute.
I think you're going to turn it over to me.
Yeah, actually, it's
Sorry.
being turned over to Rad, not me.
Oh, my bad.
It's
You're
all right.
on, Rad.
We'll all get our chance. Yep.
I've always learned something when you present, Missy. Your creativity blows me away. The things you do.
Well, coming from you, Rad, that means a lot. Thank you.
Well, I really like the idea of how you created those textures by photographing wallpaper in a restaurant and found objects and stuff. That's pretty cool. So I'm going to do something a little different than I've done before. You guys, hold on. I want to send you something here. So usually when I do these, I do a tutorial on how to do something, how to process in Lightroom or whatever. I'm not going to do that tonight. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to share with you some ideas about how I photograph and what I think I benefit from. I am going to send you a link right now, though. If you did not attend our webinar that we did in March earlier, I just sent the link, and you can access that earlier webinar there. So I think I sent the link. Allie, maybe you can check and make sure I did. I thought I did. Anyway, I'm going to keep going here. And so my approach tonight, I want to talk about the idea of revisiting a subject and photographing it again and again. What happens when you go back to a photograph or a scene that you photographed before? How does it help you to go back? What kinds of things happen when you revisit a place? So what I've found, I'm going to share with you a couple of examples of things that I've done here. Where I do this with a lot of subjects in my community, but I've got two that I'm going to give you an example of. The first one you see right here on the screen, this is a bridge that I discovered when I went to the farmer's market in Indianapolis. I love going to the winter market, but the winter market is in a different place than the summer market. And I went to this location, and the market was about 100 yards from this bridge in a beautiful building. But around it was all this industrial stuff and not much. I was really surprised to see this old bridge right there. Well, I really like this idea of revisiting that again and again. I mean, we all love a new place. I know I love traveling. I travel a lot. I go to new places. But new photographs don't always require a new location. Sometimes they begin with a new way of seeing the familiar, the things that we see every day. And it has to be kind of an intentional thing that we do. You return, you come back, you look again, you observe what's changed from the last time that I was there. Um, and for me, it's not about going back to remake the same photograph. It's really about looking for what's different in the scene, what's different in how I feel that day, all of those kinds of things, and returning with a kind of intention. So this became a ritual for me. Every Saturday, I go to the market and then I go over to the bridge. And week after week, I've done this all winter. It's been a creative practice for me. This is one of the images that I made. Now, it's very different from that first image that we saw in the first slide. I was out at this bridge through all kinds of weather this winter. I was out when it was 10 below zero and it was so cold I couldn't stay out of the car very long. That was one of the days like this. I was out there when it was raining. I was out there, under all conditions and in several seasons. And this image I made with the iPhone and I stylized it. You can see some of the texture here. I used a flypaper texture to add some interest to the image. This is another one. I went on another Saturday and I used the ultra wide angle lens in the iPhone. And I loved this. It was a very moody sky that day. You can see the muddy river. That's the White River. And it had been raining. And so the water was high. And I got low, and I used that wide angle lens to just stretch that image out. And these rails run all the way through, that scene, pulling you into that bridge. And then I processed it using Snapseed that Missy mentioned earlier. So, when I go and look at that, I'm just like, well, what's changed from when I was there before? Well, the light was different. The weather was different. It was a different season. We had that moody sky. And then what did I do? I chose a different point of view and I used a different technique by using that ultra wide angle lens. But the other thing, when you think about this, and this is the part we kind of don't really think about, but I changed too. I was in a different headspace than I was the last time I was there. And I think we underestimate what that can do or how that can influence and inform our photography. So being aware of that can be really interesting. So we've got the same bridge with new possibilities each time. So this one, if you look at each of these photographs, the one in the upper left that's sort of distorted, that was done with an app called BIMO Stitch. And that's BIMO, not BIMBO. Anyway, that's a different app. BIMO Stitch. It lets you do a vertical and a horizontal collection of images and then stitch them together. And you get this wonderful distortion that gives you an abstract image. And then this is an infrared photo that I made last Saturday. We've got spring is happening here, and we've got all that white in the foreground is greenery that's turned white, and it's starting to overtake the bridge. This one is also done with BIMO Stitch. It's a pano, and the iPhone pano is terrific, but this is not an iPhone pano in the camera app. This is a BIMO Stitch. I think it's about 6 images, vertical images stitched together, and it gives you a much higher resolution image. And it does some other fun things. This photograph was done, this is an 8-image in-camera multiple exposure. There aren't many apps that allow you to do an in-camera multiple exposure on the iPhone, but Average Cam Pro is one of them. Well, I made the multiple exposure image, and then I combined that with a single image of the bridge from the same perspective. And I put those both into Image Blender. And similar to what Missy was doing in Snapseed, I took the one image and put the other image on top. And then I could use masking to wipe away the blurry area here and leave that part, like a tunnel of focus pulling you through the bridge. Really fun to do this kind of work. This is an infrared image that I did. I've been doing iPhone infrared since the iPhone 11, and I use a 720 nanometer filter for black and white. And what's interesting about this photo for me is that I used the 0.5 ultra wide 13 millimeter lens on the phone, which I never use for infrared. Not never, obviously I did. but I don't use it because it leaves such a horrible hot spot and it's just a lot of work to fix. And so I just don't mess with it. But for some reason, I tried it on this day and it was an overcast day. There's something about the light. I didn't get a terrible hot spot. And I love what it did to the bridge. It bent the bridge in a really appealing way that makes it, abstract, but I just find that really compelling. And I love when that sort of thing happens. Um, so that's one of the experiences that I had. The other I want to share with you is another example of a place that I go. And this whole idea of a familiar subject, I think it can really, a subject can reveal more of itself over time and it almost develops a personality. I feel like I have developed a relationship with some of these trees, especially. This is at the end of my street. It's a block and a half away from my house. I can walk there even when it's below zero and get home and get warm if I have to. It's a beautiful little park, and there's this tree there. This is a tree that I photographed for years. What a wonderful summer scene, but look at this. This was the next couple, during the winter, I walked down there. I was bundled up. It was below zero. It was freezing cold. And this was the scene. And I love it. I love that the snow was moving through there and it caught the movement of the snow. And you've got the haze in the background and that figural tree just coming right out. And it shows a whole nother side of this tree. So we got one tree through time. And these are just some of the images. We've seen this one and we've seen this one. This was on one of the foggiest days I've ever seen in Indiana. And I went and made the photograph that day. This one is a rendition using an app. Missy was talking about painterly apps. Well, AI Gahaku, I love saying that. AI Gahaku is another app that lets us do some magical things with our images. And that image was created with AI Gahaku. So revisiting a place like that allows us to think about what we're seeing, that subject. We're looking at its shape, its structure. So instead of seeing that bridge as a bridge with, we label all that metal a bridge. Well, it's really lines, triangles, squares, all of those things combined. And when you start thinking about that subject as its parts rather than its label that we give it of a bridge, it becomes a different way to think about it. So so you've got the atmosphere that the weather is providing, and the time of year, and all those possibilities. I think help us to see more when we become familiar with the subject, and it gives us a kind of an invitation to experiment. And so I think it makes me think about all the different things I could do. Ooh, I could try this. Ooh, I could try that. This is that painterly interpretation, a little larger so you can see it, done with AI Gahaku. It's one of those apps that sometimes I really like, sometimes I don't. It's just hit and miss. But one thing that always happens, it produces a very small file. And so small that you can post it to social media and that's about it. You couldn't do a card, you couldn't make a print. So a lot of times if I have an image that I like, I will run it through Gigapixel AI, which is a product by Topaz. It's been known on the desktop for years. It now runs on the iPhone, and it is remarkable for upresing images. If you've cropped in on an image, maybe you crop in on a sailboat that's way out on the sea, you can enlarge that image with integrity using this app. It's very cool. This image, I did this recently. What's interesting about this image for me is that it's the first time I ever walked around to the other side of this tree, because the tree is right up against a forest and a bunch of grass and briars and stuff. So in the summer, it's hard to walk back there. Well, 2 weeks ago, there was no grass yet, nothing growing up. And I saw a whole different side of this tree. And I really liked the way it sprawled out. And I processed it using one of my favorite apps called Formulas, which is a collection of different filters, and produced the image. So I think, every time I do this, I'm going back to these familiar places. And I'm thinking, okay, what can I do differently? Well, I could move closer. I could get lower, although that's getting increasingly harder. these days. But you know, change your perspective. Shoot black and white. Shoot infrared. Oh, maybe multiple exposure, or move the camera while I'm making a photo, and look for ways to not just record what's there and document it, but interpret it. So, what might I do to interpret the image that I'm seeing? So, this is an infrared image made with the 16 Pro Max, processed in Lightroom Mobile. And again, I love what happens. All that's green foliage. It turns white in infrared, and then you have the contrast of the limbs running through all of that, and process it in Lightroom Mobile to really work those values. So I think, you know, the subject may be familiar, but our responses to it can just keep evolving. And I find myself, I look forward to Saturday morning, not just for the market now. I look forward to it because I know I'm gonna go get to photograph my bridge, my Saturday bridge. And it also teaches me patience to wait for certain things and to really observe what's going on in my environment. And it really, I think, makes me think flexibly about creative options. And that's what makes it fun for me. So, speaking of creative options, I was out there one day at the bridge, overcast day, and I said, well, what would happen if I did a vertical pano using the 0.5 ultra wide lens on the iPhone? This is the result I got. I went nuts. I love this sort of thing, this kind of abstract where you're seeing a familiar object in a completely unfamiliar way. I then added a texture to it to add to that kind of surreal image using formulas. So I would like to leave you with a challenge to do this, to try this. So pick a subject near your home, something you can walk to if you can. It could be a tree, a bridge, a barn. It's whatever. It needs to be something that draws you, something that floats your boat, and walk to it, go to it, return to it 5 times. And each time you go, look at what's changed from the last time you were there, or think about how you feel differently than the last time you were there. What do you notice? What do you notice that's different? What draws you this time that maybe you overlooked the last time? And you begin to become familiar with that location and just see what happens. Look at your images from those different visits and see how they vary. See what kinds of things emerge from that. So, you know, this is all part of what we love doing these workshops is going to cool places. But, you know, it's really not about just arriving somewhere beautiful. But, and we certainly are. The places we're going, Madeline Island, this is Devil's Island in the middle of Lake Superior, where we took a boat ride one evening. I mean, it's just absolutely beautiful. But I think really what Charles and Missy and I really want to do is really look at how to see more deeply. And this translates to wherever you are. It doesn't matter if you're at a beautiful location like this, or maybe you're in your own backyard. You can find things that will compel you to make a photograph. So I hope you can join us. You've been through this. I won't go through it again. July and October. I hope you can be there with us for one or the other of these. We're so looking forward to it. Here's my contact information. If you have any questions, you can email me. Hope you'll check out my website and subscribe to my newsletter. I send out stuff all the time, new things. And like Missy said, we try and keep up. It's really hard. Snapseed that was put out in June last year with a major overhaul, it's been updated 26 times since June. I mean, it's impossible to keep up with, but we're trying. So anyway, thank you for letting me share that with you, and I hope to see you in the field or online in the coming months. Thanks a lot. Charles, I think now it's back to you.
Great. Thank you, Rad. I'm going to share my screen too. Each of us has kind
I'm
of
trying to unshare. Here we go. There we go. There
Each
you
of
go.
us has kind of presented a surprise to you this evening. So I'll reveal my surprise in just a second here. Let me share my screen. Okay, so many of you have heard me maybe talk about how powerful the phone can be with close-ups, but tonight I want to really hone in on how amazing this little device can be in making some pretty remarkable close-up images. And most of what I'm going to show you is handheld. I'm using natural light, and it's just a lot of it really is, as Rad said, learning to see more deeply. And the seeing part is the hardest thing to teach, but we're going to try, of course. So anyway, let's launch into this. So in the older iPhones, and when I say older, I'd say anything prior to a 13, you had three ways to make a close up. You had to either use the 2x or the 3x lens, if it was even available. You would have to pinch to zoom oftentimes, which would give you digital zoom as opposed to optical zoom, so not as ideal in terms of image quality. And you could occasionally fudge and use portrait mode. Portrait mode's supposed to be where you're 8 feet away from a subject. Well, in the old days with my older iPhones, I was able to kind of inch forward and cheat a little bit and use portrait mode for a close up and still achieve that kind of shallow depth of field look. So it was totally possible. I'm going to show you some images I did with older phones. But one of the downsides was that the minimum focus distance was about 3 to 4 inches away, which is still not bad. And I don't mean to say, the older phones are bad by any means, but if you were able to go with something like a 13 or a 14 or higher, these are phones that have a little bit better image sensor quality. The 48 megapixel macro is what came with the 14 Pro and the 14 Pro Max. So the 48 megapixel 14 Pro Max was really kind of a game changer. It's using the lens that you see circled there, that bottom lens, to do your macro. It's an ultra wide camera, but yet you're still able to get close with that one lens there. And then the minimum focusing distance changed with that 14, and even the 13. But in terms of image quality, the 14 for sure with the 48 megapixels, you can now focus as close as 0.79 inches away, which is mind blowing. Pretty remarkable that we can hold the phone that close and still get some great close up. So these are 5 tips that I want to give you. As Missy was saying, pro tips. I don't know. We'll call these tips, but they're pro tips. And first, of course, is to get to know the native camera, whatever camera you have. And then I'm going to illustrate each of these in just a second. And number 2 is to set the macro control in the settings. So if you have a 13 or higher, there is a way to set your settings so that you can engage macro or be able to focus as close as that 0.79 inches. And also getting parallel, which applies to our big cameras too, of course, to get maximum sharpness. And then you can also use lock focus if you really want to lock focus. I don't always use that, but I'll show you, illustrate that. And then burst mode. That can be real handy if you're doing insects, for instance, or close-up subjects that move a lot. So here's how you would set the macro control. If you have a 13 or higher, you would basically just go into your settings and look for camera. And then if you go down, you may have to go down to find this. It's usually kind of near the bottom. You'll see the macro control there. And so when you switch that on, the way you see it in the screenshot, that's going to allow the camera to focus closer when you get close to a subject. And when you get close to a subject, you're going to see a little flower icon that appears, and I'll show you that in a second. But getting parallel, so there's a really great tool. A lot of people may not know what this is all about, but if you look in the center of your image, when you're trying to get parallel to a subject, there's a little cross mark. And if you're off axis and not parallel to your subject, you'll see a white cross mark and a yellow cross mark. But when you move the phone in such a way that it's parallel to your subject, both of those cross marks will line up and you'll see nothing but a yellow cross mark like you see here. So that's kind of handy to use that when you're trying to get parallel with subjects, especially when you're up close to a subject. So this is the little flower icon I talked about a second ago that will appear once you've set that macro control on in the settings. And then to make it disappear, so there are times where you may not want it on, you would just tap the flower and it basically makes it go away. And then I mentioned about locking the focus. I don't always do this, but there are times when you're shooting close-ups and even when you're shooting landscapes, as you see here, where you might want to lock the focus. And for that, you just basically just press and hold, and you'll see that yellow square appear. And to make it disappear, you would just tap anywhere else in the photo and it makes it go away. So that can be handy too. And you can, just tap on whatever it is you want to lock focus on. And then burst mode, I mentioned, can be handy, especially with things like insects. They've changed the design of this. It's not the best, honestly. The newer design here used to be better. But anyway, you basically, in one sort of motion, a sweeping motion, you want to sort of touch the shutter button and swipe left. And that will engage burst mode. It starts to shoot. In this case, you can see it shot 9 frames or 19 frames. And then you can then go back in, of course, and choose which of those 19 you want to use and which is the sharpest of all those images. So those little tools are helpful when you're doing close-ups. And then Missy and I, we talked about this a little bit before, are huge fans of this kit. It's a kit that comes with interchangeable lenses. They clip onto your phone. There's a 15x macro in here in particular that both of us have fallen in love with because it really kind of gives you that lens baby look or selective focus, shallow depth of field, artsy kind of close up. The phone's designed to give you edge to edge sharpness when you're shooting something close up, especially if you're parallel to your subject. And that's great in a lot of situations. But in those times where you want to kind of go beyond that and make an image that's less documentary, this little 15x thing can be handy. There's also a circular polarizer in here and a bunch of other lenses. So you see here, this is just highlighting the macro tool. It will certainly focus closer than the iPhone is capable of, the native iPhone is capable of focusing. And these are just some of the other tools in there. But anyway, so here we have a flower. Nothing wrong at all with this. I mean, it's amazing that we can even get this close with this much sharpness now to a subject. But when you add that little 15x macro lens, you can do something a little more artistic like this and get, that shallow depth of field look to something. So, and Missy is using it a lot just to shoot backgrounds. She mentioned backgrounds in her talk. You can just go around and shoot, the world with that on there and get landscapes and do that and blend that with some sharper images. So this is kind of what it looks like, the little handle that clips on. We found that if you go to a hardware store and look for these little cabinet bumpers, you can stick one of those on there and be able to have it rest a little bit more securely around the phone. It helps to sort of keep it steady. So any of you who have already purchased this from us, just look for cabinet bumpers at Lowe's or Home Depot. Any of those stores would have those, and you would just stick it on there. So you can see on the left here, there it is over the bottom lens of the phone. So you want to clip it over the bottom lens, and because that's the 1x lens. And then you want to make sure you turn macro off when you're using this little clip-on lens. So you do want to not have that little yellow flower showing. You want to tap that off. And then you can see the flip side of the phone in the image on the right there, where the little bumper just helps to keep it a little more secure on there and makes it where it'll rest a little bit more flush against the phone there. So here's some images, some more images that were done with this 15x. You can see, how artsy you can get if you like the O'Keefe look with flowers and such. Backgrounds that are blurred. These are straight out of the phone. I mean, with some editing, of course, but no, blur tools or anything were used to make these backgrounds look blurred. This was using burst mode in order to get the sharpest, image of this insect here. So pretty remarkable that we can do. I mean, the detail in the hair and everything, just astounding to me with the phone now. And then here's another one, of course, just sepia tone and using the radial filter. That can be interesting sometimes, where that does the center portion of the image sharp and you get this radial effect. And then these are just some images I wanted to show because they are going way back to the very first phone I think I ever bought. I don't know what your first phone was, Rad, but ours, I think, were the 7 Plus, which was when it first came out. And I mean, still, even back then, pretty amazing, the sharpness, all of that. But it's the technique that really helps too. You know, you want to get parallel, especially a subject like this, using that little cross mark in the center to get parallel. Made this image of a tulip inside of a tulip. And then this one, I was really trying to use portrait mode back in the day, and it did okay. Background's really pretty distracting here and all, but it was fun to just play around and see what you could do. Or this one, these little seeds that were, in midair. It did pretty well with that, but it takes some finagling or took some finagling to get it. Or this one, this was made at Longwood Gardens before they changed the water lilies. I can't wait to see what the new water lily pavilion looks like there. But anyway, this just shows you how even with some of the earlier phones, this was an XS Max, iPhone. So it's not always about having the latest, greatest model. A lot of it really is just how well you can see and your technique. Here's another one, of course, again with the iPhone X. This was at the Chicago Botanic Garden. Some of you who did the Out of Chicago conference may remember this thing is only blooming for a few days, this one cactus, and everybody was crowded around in the greenhouse. Whoops. And then this one too, so astounding. Yes, I love doing close-ups with my macro lens on my Nikon as well as my Olympus, but why not, if this camera happens to be with you, use your iPhone to its full capability? This one here is okay. I would probably use the Touch Retouch app to fix that background. It's a little busy and all of that, but it did a pretty well or pretty good job here of, isolating the subject, giving all the detail in the center there that you would want to be sharp. Same here with this one. So anyway, I hope this inspires you to use the phone and get closer to subjects. This was an image that I used where I combined Distressed FX. That's another app we'll talk about in our seminars, and use that to make that one. Using the, milkweed, a great subject for close-ups. And I challenged myself to try and get a fairly good iPhone shot. And this was with my iPhone 11 Pro Max. So, and then setups, it's so fun. I have a whole workshop where we do indoor setups. And this was, a lot of you have tried this, where you get a piece of glass and put a subject underneath and apply Rain-X to the glass and then spray the glass with plain water droplets, and then you can shoot down on it. But a lot of this involves technique of really, not only seeing what you're looking at, but getting parallel. In this situation, that's so key. Another one with that clip-on lens, I can tell that because the outer edges are a little more blurred. But if you like this kind of look, it's not for everybody, but if you do like more artistic type close-ups, it's a great tool for that. Misty and I took a workshop actually where they did frozen flowers. I love that idea. We have a whole new art studio here in Boulder, and we have a huge freezer where we're going to start freezing flowers and photographing those with our iPhones and our big cameras. And here's another one, just the sharpness in that, and the level of detail with every water droplet. So here's another one with the 12. So I'm kind of going up from earliest to latest in terms of the phone models here. And you can just see how I think it improves with the edge sharpness, especially as we go up. Here's another one from using the 12 Pro Max. Now, there is a feature now in the phone, and we can talk about this more, where if there are distinct edges to a subject, the phone will sometimes kick into portrait mode, and it will use portrait mode and shoot in portrait mode. You don't always have to choose portrait mode first. And we can talk about that a little bit more in the Q&A. Here's another one. So yeah, just any subject you would normally shoot with your big camera, totally possible with the iPhone as well. When we're in Asilomar, we may make a trip to the aquarium there. It's a world-class aquarium there in Monterey. This was just a close-up I did in a different aquarium of a jellyfish. So totally useful, and it'd be fun, I think, for us to go and shoot with our phones in the aquarium. Anyway, here's another one with the 13 Pro Max. Again, the sharpness really just astounding to me what you can do. This was a piece of fabric behind some glass, and I just loved the abstract nature of this one. Again, not the latest and greatest iPhone model, but still totally viable as an image. And with AI gigapixel, as Rad mentioned, and Missy, we can upres now and make all these images look great as prints. Here's another one with water drops. Put some different stuff underneath this time, some colorful papers and whatnot. Uh, just, again, the sharpness, incredible. Yes, I'm applying a little bit of sharpness in the post-processing, but it was pretty sharp to begin with when it came out of the camera. So another one behind glass. That's so much fun to play with textured glass, clear glass, that is. Another one here. So all the type close-ups you might be excited about with your big camera, totally possible with the phone as well. Abstracts like this and this. This was rain on the side of an old fire truck, and I love the pattern it made on that one. Or, butterflies, they're best, of course, in the early morning when they aren't moving so much. And getting parallel to that wing was what was on my mind when I made that shot. And then images like this, I love, of course, the spiral Fibonacci pattern. Anytime I see it, I'm just gravitated toward something like that. And then another one. So I could go on and on. We're up to the 14 now. I'll keep going. This is another one where you'd really want to get parallel to your subject. And again, these are all handheld natural light. That's what's so amazing too. I mean, if you've ever struggled with your big camera trying to use a tripod, it can be very freeing sometimes to make close-ups this way. I enjoy my big cameras, don't get me wrong, but it's just fun when the phone is accessible and right there to try it with the phone too. Another one of some frozen flowers. And this was just an art piece somebody did. Again, that Fibonacci attracted me. Here's the black and white version of one that I got pretty close to this agave. And then here, the shallow depth of field just happened in the camera. I wasn't using portrait mode here, but because I got so close, when you get up into the 14 Pro Max arena, the phone is capable of detecting those edges and making shallow depth of field. And then this is fun. You may want to try this someday. I've got some milk, put these little leaves in it, and lit it from behind. It's shooting straight down, and got some fun images that way. So these are great for winter days, of course, too, of course. Here's another one with the 15 Pro Max, and just again the detail and just the sharpness, amazing. This was in a flower market in the Netherlands. Made that image. And then these are just some more recent ones I've done using that clip-on lens. This was actually made on Madeline Island when we did a photo shoot there. We'll take people to one of the greenhouses is where this was. And I believe this one might have been the same location. So anyway, and then another, if you like that sort of shallow depth of field, here's some more that were done with the more recent phone model. And then the Netherlands again. I love the tulips over there. But what's nice is with the size of the phone, unlike a big macro lens, I can kind of get right in there and get inside almost of a tulip. These were huge tulips. These were parrot tulips in the Netherlands. And then let's not forget the 17 Pro Max. That's what Missy and I currently have. Have not had the phone as long, so I don't have quite as many examples here to show you. This was actually at Asilomar. Missy and I went last month and scouted Asilomar. You guys are going to love that location. It's phenomenal, just full of opportunities, including Weston Beach, which is where Edward Weston made all of his famous black and white photos. And speaking of black and white, here's another one. So anyway, hope you'll join us. This is a fun image that Rad actually got up on a table and shot down on this. This was everybody's iPhone from the workshop. And we had everybody in a dark room turn on their screen and show us one of their favorite images full screen. So this is the type of image you could make if you come to Madeline Island. And of course, we haven't been to Asilomar yet, so no images there are from Asilomar, but those are all from Madeline Island.
Well, Charles, thanks for the credit for that photo, but it was your creative idea.
Well, I
I just
know, but
managed
you
to
helped
climb up on the
execute it. You helped execute it, and it was a
well,
lot of
it was
fun.
really fun to do. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I hope we do it again. We should do it again. That should be like a tradition. Every at the end of all these workshops, do that. Anyway, so you can subscribe to our email list. This is how you can find me, and that's it. There may be questions, of course, too.
Yes, of course. We believe this one's for Missy or anyone, but can you save a large file in Snapseed?
So yeah, so Snapseed will do raw images. I've put my big camera images on my phone and put those in Snapseed. As with anything, these apps, Snapseed will output a fairly large image, but some apps, as you probably know, output smaller images. So now we have a lot of the AI gigapixel upresing software. So if you do need a larger image, that's an option, either desktop version or app version.
Awesome. This question's for all of you. It's come in a few times, but do you use a tripod? And then this one specifically came to while Rad was talking. Do you use a tripod for the wide angle?
Well, I'll take that. I like most of us, I don't like a tripod, but I do. I have a love-hate relationship with it. I like it. It slows me down, but I use it when I'm doing any kind of a long exposure. There's an app I use for infrared called Camera Plus Pro Camera and Editor, and it does a really nice long exposure, 30 seconds, and it gives a wonderful tone to infrared, but you really need a tripod for it. The other time I use a tripod, our new phones have this 200 millimeter lens, the 8X. It's really hard to get a sharp photo unless you really brace yourself on something or have a tripod with that long lens. So those are two times when I use it. Or if I just want to slow down, have my hands free and not worry about stuff, I will use it. Someone asked about doing macro. Charles, I don't know if you use a tripod there. It's really difficult to get to be steady sometimes with a macro. And I do use a tripod, but I use some different gooseneck kinds of things that will allow me to really maneuver that phone into different tight locations. But that's I don't know. What about you guys for tripods? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, I have the same love-hate relationship as you, Rad. And for close-ups, honestly, I don't usually use a tripod just because I feel like it frees me more to move around and get the subject the way I want. But yeah, I could for sure see myself being disciplined enough to get in there and do that. And it requires more patience, of course.
Yeah.
Missy, what about?
Yeah, so I think I don't use a tripod very often. I think when I would use it is for two apps. We didn't really talk about, Brad touched on one earlier, but there's two shooting apps, one slow shutter camera, the other one's average camera pro. So slow shutter camera is the one where it's going to let you do long exposures. Average camera pro is the one that's taking multiple images and stacking them. And if you wanted to say get a scene where the clouds were moving or the water's moving, but you want everything else tack sharp, then you'd want to have that on a tripod to be able to steady that, but get the motion of other things.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Awesome.
think I just wanted to answer one question live because I think we answered it written, but I know there was a question about can I come as a complete beginner? So I just wanted to address everyone that comes has completely different levels of skill. We love that. And I think one of the great things is because it's a 10-to-1 ratio, you really get the individual care that you need. And we want to make sure you leave with what you want. So if someone's coming in with tons of experience, they're going to get to the next level. Someone who's coming in with beginner, you're going to get to that next level too and be ready to be an expert soon. So we take everyone with every level, and we'd love to have you. And I think for our Android users, I tried to put some apps in there that were equivalent. We do use equivalent apps. And I will say last year we had, I think, 33 students and we had one Android user. And so we were all kind of concerned. We're like, oh no, is he going to enjoy this? But he said he had the best time. He loved it. He learned a lot. And we all worked together. So if you do want to come with an Android, feel free to come. We'll muddle through it together with you, but we definitely have the equivalents, and we'll work with you to try to find an equivalent. If we're showing a feature, we'll try to get you, hey, check out this on your Android. So we'll work together with you, and you should have fun too. So
Yeah, Androids and all types of iPhones,
yes,
correct?
correct.
Yes.
Yes, any model iPhone. Yeah.
Yeah. Charles, a few people are asking, do you have to set up the parallel on your phone, or does that usually come up? A few people are saying that it's not showing up.
I'm pretty sure it's set by default. I don't know, Rad. What do you think? It's in the settings, maybe. Maybe you do
I'm
have
sorry.
to.
I was reading another question. I
Oh, okay.
apologize.
They
I
they
typed
were
it in the
asking
answer.
about the little plus
Oh, you
mark,
did.
the show if something's parallel. Is that something you have to set in settings? Or
I don't believe it is. Is it, Missy? I
oh,
know
it
there's a
is.
place where you set the a level. Does it? Is it
Okay.
Yeah,
also?
right under. So when you go into settings, if you look on your iPhone, there'll be settings. You tap on settings, you'll scroll down, find the thing that says camera, tap on camera, and there you'll see a whole bunch of things in there. You scroll down and you'll see a grid. You'll also see levels. So you want to make sure levels is on in green. That means the levels will show up. And if you like that grid that shows you like the rule of thirds,
The
that you
composition
that on.
grid,
Yeah,
yeah.
the composition grid, you can turn that on there too.
But
And
how
It,
about the little plus mark in the center? That's what
yeah,
I'm
that's
wondering about.
levels.
It will
Yeah,
really.
level. Yes.
Because
oh, okay. So
my
there
level
is a
shows,
level switch. I
yeah,
didn't know
my
that it
level shows
controlled
a
the
horizontal line that turns yellow when something's level.
Right, but levels is either if you're horizontal, it's showing you the line. If you're
Okay. All
perpendicular.
right.
Got
See,
it.
this is how we learn
Excellent.
from each other. It's
Wonderful.
great
There
when
we
we
Wonderful.
have
Good to
good
go.
know.
scientists,
Yes,
right?
boys.
Takes a village. Yeah.
There we
Okay.
go. That's helpful.
Good question. Thank you. Yeah.
Let's see. We've got lots. I'm just trying to go through. Oh, this one, I think you answered it in the chat too, but people are wondering about raw versus just the photo being taken. I think Rad, you answered that one.
Well, I'm not sure I can't remember what the question was before, but it was like, what do you shoot, RAW or JPEG or HEIF? Those are three format choices you have. The RAW file is going to give you the most data. So, and it's going to be the least edited, if you will. And all RAW files have some editing done to them. Like Pro RAW is a flavor of RAW. Your Nikon has a flavor of RAW. Your all that. But a raw file is going to be less processed than anything else, which means you get to make those decisions about color and light and so on. It also takes up more space than a JPEG or a HEIF file. A HEIF file, though, is an excellent format. It's more efficient than a JPEG in that it's a smaller file size, but it has more data in it for processing. So it's a really good alternative. And what you're going to do in your settings, you're going to choose between JPEG or HEIF. And what that means is when you're not shooting RAW, it's going to default to one of those, whichever you chose. And there are sometimes some things that you're going to do, like when you're using certain apps or camera tools on the phone, even though it'll say 48 megapixel RAW up in the corner, that particular feature won't allow you to shoot a RAW file at that resolution. So there's some little weird things like that, but it's really a choice you make. Um,
Perfect. And then let's see, Rad, can you let us know which IR filter you use?
Yeah, so I put a link. I'll do it again. I've got a link to a blog post that describes all the tools and accessories that I like today for these phones. It's constantly changing target, but brands for filters themselves, Hoya is great, Kalari is great, Spencer's camera is great, Newer makes one. These are all good filters. I recommend 720 nanometer if you want the black and white. Um, they're going to vary in how what they look like, the result they produce. Even though they're all 720, they're going to have subtle differences between them, and that's okay. I'm using a Hoya right now that I really like. And then there's also, you need a filter mount, something to hold that filter against the phone. And I just discovered a new one that I really like by a company called Newer, Neewer. And the my blog post, I describe all that stuff, and I have links to where you can get those tools. Um, I'll put it in the chat
Yeah,
again.
and Rad, there was one person who had a question because she's now got the 17 Pro Max what filter holder can you now use?
Right. And I
Donna,
responded,
Donna had that
yeah,
question.
Donna she was with us in
Right.
Chicago at the
Yep.
Gardens. Yeah. So when you get the 17 Pro Max, all the stuff that you have isn't going to work anymore.
Of
You need
course.
new stuff. So you'll need a new case, you'll need a new filter mount, and the filter will still work, but you have to have a filter. So Donna had a 58 millimeter filter already, but she's got a new mount, or she needs a new mount. Well, the one I recommend is a 67 millimeter, takes a 67 millimeter filter. Well, you don't need to buy another $100 filter. Instead, buy a $10 step up ring that, or step down ring in this case. It would have one side that screws into the filter mount at 67 millimeter, and then the other side that would accept the 58 millimeter filter that she has already. So it's a lot, you can mix and match that way. But I'll put this link in the chat again, or if you just Google my name and go to my blogs, my website, and look at my blogs, you'll see a number of different things about infrared photography and where you can get these accessories. I also have a tutorial available. If somebody wants that, send me an email and I'll send you a link to it. It's about a 2-hour tutorial, goes through all the stuff you need to do to the process, the accessories, and the processing, which is critical to getting the kind of images that you want.
Share my screen one more time here, and you can see there's a QR code there too. But we are getting close to our time here. Actually, we're well over our 1 hour mark, which is always wonderful because that means there's so many things going on. And seriously, the photos you all take and just the knowledge that you share has been so great. A lot of kudos in the chat too of much appreciation for the three of you and sharing your knowledge with us all. You can continue to get knowledge from these three at their 2 workshops coming up. So Madeline Island campus in Wisconsin, July 13th through the 17th. Pacific Grove, California campus at Asilomar, October 12th through the 16th. That's arriving the day before for a welcome reception, and then a week-long class where you get to learn and download a lot of apps and work within those apps with Rad, Charles, and Melissa. So we hope that you will join them this coming year. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Rad, Charles, Melissa, for taking some time to chat with us. But we will hope to see all of you on this webinar to these workshops, and we will see the 3 of you on Madeline and in California.
Can't wait.
Awesome.
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a wonderful night or day, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Hope to
Hi.
see you
Thanks,
this summer.
everybody. Hope to see you there.